Chapter 8 Virtue Court 2008 present. Construction of what would become the Virtue Court Monastery Complex had finally begun in early 2007. It took almost 12 years to start building after we bought the land. We had to acquire more funds and get necessary permits in order. Not only that, but we knew that whoever decided to build first on all that isolated, open land would have to pay for water and utilities to be established. So we waited for a couple of the big developers to start their own projects before we started ours. Sure enough, in 2006 developers came in and built walls and roads, including what would become Virtue Court, where the monastery is today. Because they had it all done, we didn't have to build all the walls. And water and electricity were now close to our property. Otherwise it would have been very expensive. That's why we had to wait for all those years. Since 1995. Construction finally started once the developers had finished establishing the area around the monastery land. By the time we were ready to build the monastery in 2007, the value of our land, for which we'd only paid $100,000, had gone up to $3 million. So we were able to start building without sponsors or co-signers, since the bank readily loaned us $2,400,000 to build the temple. Otherwise, we couldn't have built it like we did. In early 2008, while construction of the monastery was still underway, Sayadaw ordained the first new monk at Chaya Meditation Monastery's Virtue Court campus. Although the ordination hall was not yet complete, the land it would sit on had already been consecrated for ordinations. The new monk, Fra Timmy, would remain in robes for about 2 weeks. 134 Virtue Court 2008 present. One of the finishing touches as the property neared completion early in the second quarter of 2008 was the addition of traditional Thai and Burmese-style decorations on the exteriors of the monastery buildings. The former Fra Arom, the Thai artist who in 1995 had taken temporary ordination as monk in order to assist Sayadaw during his intensive retreat, volunteered his services with the design and construction of the decorations. I had initially reached out to a contractor about doing the decorations for the temple, but he quoted me $90,000 for the job. The former Fra Aram had remained a regular supporter of the temple all those years. When he heard how high the quote was, he offered to do it for free. So these decorations you can see today at Chaya Meditation Monastery were the work of the former Fra Aram, who eventually moved away to Chiang Mai. Las Vegas Sayadaw being assisted by the former Fra Aram as decorations are added to the exterior of the buildings at Chaya Meditation Monastery, 2008. Near the end of the second quarter of 2008, some 14 months after construction began, the 4 main buildings of the monastery, the main Dhamma hall, the north nuns and south monks residential wings, and 135 Las Vegas Sayadaw, the ordination hall, were complete. A complete block wall was built around the 2.5 acres of the monastery compound, and a grand opening was set for June 1, 2008. As Sayadaw had continued to recruit monks to come to Chaya Meditation Monastery, around 2007 he'd reached out to his older brother, a grocery store worker in Myanmar, and invited him to come to the United States as a guest at the upcoming grand opening ceremony. Sayadaw helped his brother obtain a tourist visa, then sponsored the trip overseas. Grand opening of the Chaya Meditation Monastery complex on Virtue Court. The ceremony was attended by 134 monks, 13 nuns, and over 1,000 lay supporters. June 1, 2008. Not long after his arrival in the United States, Sayadaw's brother requested bhikkhu ordination. He was soon ordained in the newly completed Virtue Court Ordination Hall, with Sayadaw as his preceptor. U Sandawara has been a resident monk at Chaya Meditation Monastery ever since. One of the temple's Western lay supporters would later say that although it's difficult to communicate with U Sandawara because of his limited ability to speak English, the elderly monk is very nice and gentle. In mid-2009, about a year after U Sandawara's ordination, his friends Umagenda and the young monk from North Kunhat village, 136 Virtue Court, 2008 present, Ashan Uttara, having finally secured their visas, arrived in the United States and settled in at Chaya Meditation Monastery. As Sayadaw and the other monastics had been settling in well at the Virtue Court Monastery, the master had been thinking about finding a special Buddha statue for the ordination hall. For our ordination hall, I wanted a Buddha statue made from the highest quality jade. I contacted my friend Mercury Sayadaw in Rangoon. He knew many people and had many connections. So in 2009, he arranged for me to get some high-quality white jade from a mine in Madaya, which is near Mandalay. We had to pay for it in advance, but then they started digging for the jade. It took them a year to find it, but then they made our Buddha statue out of it. They made it in Mandalay. The monastery was also able to acquire a few small Bodhi, Ficus religiosa trees. They came to us via a Vietnamese temple in Los Angeles. I was told that they were grown from seeds from the original tree under which the Buddha attained enlightenment at Bodh Gaya in India. Sometime that year, Sayadaw spoke with his former university teacher who'd moved to New Delhi in the mid-1970s, catapulting the master to the role of being himself a teacher even before he'd graduated. He'd recently come to Japan, where he'd end up being for 6 months, and invited Sayadaw for a visit. There were maybe 20,000 Burmese people living and working in Japan at that time. But since there was no permanent Burmese monastic community there, every year the people would invite a Burmese monk to come for maybe 6 months. They'd rent an apartment for the monk and call it a temple. Today there's a Burmese temple in Japan, but not back then. 137 Las Vegas Sayadaw, the Burmese community in Tokyo, had invited Sayadaw's former teacher to be their monk for 6 months. They rented him a small 1- or 2-bedroom apartment, so he invited me to join him in Japan for a while. While I was at the temple, Japanese people would sometimes come to visit us, and I'd teach them meditation. Then they'd offer to show us around the city. One day, a Japanese Zen master came to the temple to meet us. The master was very nice and offered to take us to a nearby observation tower, where we went up an elevator and then had a nice view of the city. Sayadaw and his former teacher spent their free time, almost every day, traveling all around Japan together, including some time spent visiting the classic temples of historic Kyoto. Sayadaw was impressed by the to-the-minute timeliness and efficiency of the Japanese transportation system, including the bullet train, or Shinkansen, they often took to quickly cover long distances across the country. With certain trains reaching some 200 miles per hour, the Shinkansen system has been operating for more than 50 years without a single accident-related fatality or injury on board. Tokyo, Japan, circa 2009, 138 Virtue Court, 2008 present, the Brahma of Caesar's Palace. One day, Sayadaw was teaching a foreign monk about the cultivation of Brahmavihara. These 4 sublime states include metta, goodwill, karuna, compassion, mudita, sympathetic joy, and upekkha, equanimity. He explained that the word Brahmavihara can be broken down into 2 words, Brahma, which refers to a noble person, and Vihara, which refers to a dwelling place. In essence, the compound word refers to the dwelling of one's mind in a peaceful and sublime state. Yet, in Thailand, India, and Cambodia, they have these 4-faced Brahma statues. The Hindu people believe that Brahma is the creator of the universe, and as such, that he actually has 4 faces. But, in fact, the 4 faces are symbolic of the 4 sublime states. They think Brahma is the creator. But nowadays, humans create Brahma, and then they pay respect to the very thing they've created. They've misunderstood the point. Sayadaw was once told that in the early 1980s, the very wealthy owner of a Thai newspaper started coming to Las Vegas every year. He'd apparently stay at Caesar's Palace and spend millions of dollars, sometimes returning to Thailand a winner, and other times returning a loser. During those early years of his visits to Las Vegas, the man financed the casting of an 8,500-pound bronze statue of Brahma, which he reportedly hoped would bring him good luck. The statue was promptly donated to Caesar's Palace, and put on display in front of the luxurious casino. To this day, gamblers from around the world stop to pay respect to the statue before they go inside to gamble. People come to pay respect to the statue in hopes of winning. But now that the statue belongs to the casino, who do you think it will help? The customers or the owner? 139 Las Vegas Sayadaw. More than 25 years later, some people from Caesar's Palace approached Sayadaw and asked him if they could give the statue to Chaya Meditation Monastery. The casino representatives assured him that many people would come to the temple to pay respect to the statue, which in turn would be good for the monastery. I didn't accept it. This is a meditation center. And I don't want a lot of people coming here to pay respect to the statue. That's not our purpose here. And so the statue remains in front of Caesar's Palace to this day. Sayadaw added that despite all the time wealthy Asian travelers and foreign government officials, even from Buddhist countries, spend in Las Vegas, they seldom visit Chaya Meditation Monastery or offer any kind of support. Even before Chaya Meditation Monastery, when the first Buddhist temple in Nevada, Wat Buddha Bhavana, was being built, 10 acres of land had been purchased. But it was the same situation. It was left entirely up to the local people to fund and otherwise support the project. Not only that, Sayadaw said, but a very wealthy Asia dignitary once gave a $5,000 tip to a cocktail waitress during a time when Chaya Meditation Monastery was collecting money to send to victims of a major flood in Thailand. Sayadaw has heard these things from his Thai supporters. See? It's very important to have these Brahmavihara, goodwill, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity if we hope to achieve peace in the world. Too many people don't know how to use their time or resources wisely, and as such, they squander opportunities to be of benefit to themselves and others. 140 Virtue Court, 2008 present, Vesak Day, Chaya Meditation Monastery. The first 4 monks behind Sayadaw are, left to right, U Magenda, U Zautika, Ashin Uttara, and U Waziranyana. The future Ashin Arsena had been born and raised in a 100-person Palong village called Kyauk Phu, some 4 hours' drive from Sayadaw's home village of Kunhot, via dangerous mountain roads. He'd lost both of his parents when he was 12 years old and moved in with his aunt and uncle. The young boy ordained as a 13-year-old Samanera around 1996 at Namsan Monastery, Myanmar, in the city of Namsan, some 3 miles from his village. U Magenda was living there at the time and soon became his teacher, the monk who would foremost expose him to the life of Dhamma. In the second half of 2009, shortly after U Magenda had left Myanmar and established himself at Chaya Meditation Monastery, Ashin Arsena received a call from his teacher. U Magenda told him that Sayadaw was looking for more monks to come live at the Las Vegas temple. He suggested that his young student consider coming. Ashin Arsena was intrigued by the idea and expressed interest. In early 2010, Sayadaw himself called Ashin Arsena and told him that if he was really interested in coming, he should start applying for a visa. When I first talked to Sayadaw, he asked me if I'd already completed my Pali education. I told him that I had. He said to me that if I wanted to come to the United States to live at his 141 Las Vegas Sayadaw Monastery, he would help me secure a visa. I told him that I really wanted to come, but as Ashin Arsena began the process, he found it difficult to get a tourist visa since he was only 27 years old, and government politics at the time made it hard for younger people from Myanmar to enter the United States. The 2 monks wouldn't get a chance to meet until a visit to Yangon by Sayadaw some 3 years later. Las Vegas Sayadaw, leading the Chaya Meditation Monastery community on pilgrimage at Ramabhar Stupa. This is an important pilgrimage site, as it is the place where the Buddha attained parinibbana. The stupa was built over some of the Buddha's ashes, at the spot where he was cremated, Kushinagar, Uttar Pradesh, India, circa 2011. Around 2011, Sayadaw took a break from his duties at Chaya Meditation Monastery in order to lead a 15-day pilgrimage to Asia for more than 40 members of the temple community. It was Sayadaw's 4th trip to India. They also visited Thailand and Myanmar, his fifth trip back to his home country. In Myanmar, the group visited Yangon and Mandalay, stopping to see the three temples where Sayadaw had once lived. They also visited Bagan and Shan State, where the master grew up. Unfortunately, Sayadaw's obligations during the trip prohibited him from paying a visit to his home village. 142 Virtue Court, 2008 present. In speaking of the Mandalay area, Sayadaw would later rave to a student about how wonderful it was at nearby Sagaing Hills. This spiritually rich area, teeming with monks and nuns for centuries, lies just southwest of Mandalay, on the other side of the Ayeyarwady River. Las Vegas Sayadaw, at the remains of the Buddha's hut at Savatthi Jetavana. The Buddha lived at Jetavana for 19 out of his 45 vasas. Uttar Pradesh, India, circa 2011. Sometime in 2012, a 67-year-old retired chief engineer from Myanmar came to Chaya Meditation Monastery to participate in a temporary group ordination. After his retirement, the man had settled in the United States after a 30-year career that was primarily based in Thailand and Singapore, but also on barges traveling around the world. He had originally settled in Seattle, where he'd met Sayadaw a year or two earlier when the latter had traveled to Washington. In time, though, the man moved to California, just a stone's throw away from Las Vegas. He arrived at Chaya Meditation Monastery for his temporary ordination with an existing meditation practice. During his working years, whenever he'd been able to return to his home in Yangon from his responsibilities abroad, he'd made a point to walk 30 minutes each day to Shwedagon Pagoda to practice meditation. Given the strong meditative atmosphere of Chaya Meditation Monastery, on the day of his temporary bhikkhu ordination, the man 143 Las Vegas Sayadaw decided to remain a monk for the rest of his life. He was given the Buddhist name Uzawana. Sayadaw would later offer a reflection on Uzawana coming to Chaya Meditation Monastery. Uzawana used to live in Washington. He and two others, a man from Oregon and another man from New York, wanted to ordain, so they came together to Chaya Meditation Monastery. The other two soon disrobed, but Uzawana wanted to continue. Uzawana fit in well with the daily meditation schedule. In fact, he could often be seen meditating by himself for long periods in the main hall of the monastery. In mid-November 2012, the beloved 62-year-old English monk Ajahn Brahm paid a brief visit to Chaya Meditation Monastery. A member of the Thai forest tradition and a disciple of the legendary forest master Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Brahm is famous for his eloquence and his sense of humor. A Sri Lankan supporter of the Ajahn Brahm community had invited him to Las Vegas and made arrangements for the monk to offer a Dhamma talk at Chaya Meditation Monastery. Clearly exhausted from a long flight from Western Australia, where he was the abbot of Bodhinyana Monastery, and a busy itinerary involving the offering of 3 Dhamma talks at 3 locations in just 2 days, Ajahn Brahm gave only a short talk, then answered questions for about 20 minutes before departing. One of the evening's lay attendees would later reflect that the busyness of Ajahn Brahm's hectic schedule showed in his demeanor. The usually jolly monk had appeared to her to be tired and a bit eager for the night to be over with. In early 2013, construction began on a tall, golden stupa, named World Peace Lucky Happy Pagoda, in the garden in the northwest corner of the monastery complex. The beautiful pagoda would be the last visual remnant from Sayadaw's unusual dream of Guanyin at the end of Vasa in 2002, to be constructed on the temple grounds. The stupa was completed on May 3, 2013. 144 Virtue Court, 2008 present, the last pilgrimage. In mid-May 2013, Sayadaw and members of the Chaya Meditation Monastery community embarked on a 3rd pilgrimage to Myanmar. It was Sayadaw's 6th return to his home country since he left in 1988. Las Vegas Sayadaw, with members of the Chaya Meditation Monastery community on pilgrimage at Kanbauzathadi Palace, built for King Bayanong in 1556. Bago, Myanmar, May 2013. Umaginda had given his student Ashin Arsena the heads up that Sayadaw was coming to Myanmar and would be spending some time in Yangon at the start of the group's pilgrimage. He suggested the two monks meet. Ashin Arsena had recently moved to Yangon and was living in a Periati monastery there with his friend Ashin Mandala when Sayadaw arrived in the nation's largest city. When Sayadaw came to Myanmar in May 2013, he stayed with his old friend Mercury Sayadaw at Aung Zaidi. I was staying at P. Lon Chanthar Nansan Temple in Behan Township, Yangon at the time. I'd never been to Aung Zaidi, as it was in Mingalar Dun Township, near the international airport, and about a 35-minute drive away from where I was staying. 145 Las Vegas Sayadaw. I met Sayadaw for the first time while he was at Aung Zaidi. Although we'd spoken 3 years earlier about me trying to get a visa to come to America, I'd not been successful. He told me that if I was interested in staying at his monastery for a long time, I should apply for an R1 visa, since it would be easier to get. Although Sayadaw would play a role in getting Ashin Arsena's visa application changed to an R1 visa after he returned home from the pilgrimage, it would still be quite some time before the young monk would have his opportunity to come to the United States. Las Vegas Sayadaw, seated center with the abbot of a local temple, Ashin Sumangala, Ashin Arsena, and Ashin Mandala, left to right, joined by lay supporters at Aung Zaidi, Yangon, Myanmar, May 2013. Although Sayadaw's international travels continued, some 8 years after the 2013 pilgrimage to Myanmar, a lay student asked him whether he thought there would be more group pilgrimages to Asia in the future. He replied that it was unlikely. 146 Virtue Court, 2008, present. On May 3, 2015, the second anniversary of the completion of the World Peace Lucky Happy Pagoda, 1,011-inch Buddha statues, each with a relic of the Buddha inside, were enshrined inside the pagoda. Donors from some 7 different regions of the world, including Sri Lanka, Nepal, Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and China, had offered the relics to be enshrined. Group portrait prior to enshrining the 1,000 Buddha statues inside the World Peace Lucky Happy Pagoda, May 3, 2015. Before the pagoda was resealed the following day, a mysterious woman showed up at the monastery and approached Sayadaw. It was very strange. A lady, maybe about 40 years old, showed up with some relics from the Buddha's blood. They were red and yellow. She came up to me and said that she'd gotten lost trying to find the temple. She said it took her 2 hours to find it. She then said, "I know you're about to close the pagoda, but I want to offer these relics to you." Sayadaw didn't know who she was or what her name was. He had never seen her before. She gave me the relics, then left. It was very strange. 147 Las Vegas Sayadaw relics. A student once asked Sayadaw about the relics of enlightened beings. The master explained that the relics of the Buddha and the relics of ordinary arahants look different. Arahant relics resemble semi-spherical pieces of bone, generally the size of a pea, whereas relics of the Buddha tend to be smaller. The Buddha's bone relics are usually irregular in shape and off-white in color. They resemble fine gravel. The Buddha's blood relics, on the other hand, are tiny red or yellow spheres, about the size of a grain of sand. The great Burmese meditation master Sayadaw U Pandita, Las Vegas Sayadaw's primary meditation teacher at Mahasi Sasana Yekta Meditation Center in 1968, was believed by many to have been an arahant, yet reportedly the only relics found amongst his cremated remains after he died in 2016 resembled gold leaf. The student asked Sayadaw whether relics ever appear like gemstones or gold leaf. The master replied that he'd not seen that before, reiterating the description he'd just given of genuine arahant relics. You can go to India and see the bone relics of Venerables Moggallana and Sariputta to see what I mean. Mahasi Sayadaw's relics look like their relics. Sayadaw shared that over the years, temple supporters had donated relics of some of the Buddha's great arahant disciples to Chaya Meditation Monastery. Delivered in several small bottles, Sayadaw had over time received some of the relics of Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Moggallana, and Venerable Savali. The student then asked Sayadaw how there are enough Buddha relics to be shared amongst different peoples around the world, as it seems there would be a rather limited amount of the precious material. Relics can multiply for the faithful, for those who pay respect to them. He recalled an occasion decades earlier when he'd been in Myanmar. 148 Virtue Court, 2008 present. His friend Mercury Sayadaw had given him one of 81 unusual Buddha relics associated with the very famous Pankalo Halabamuni Buddha statue in Myanmar. Sayadaw kept the relic near him and had venerated it in his room at his home monastery over the years. He happened to look at the relic one day about 6 years after receiving it and was shocked to see that the single relic had become 3. It's because the Buddha had a short life. Other Buddhas had long lifespans, maybe 20,000 or more years, but our Buddha lived only 80 years. Since his missionary work lasted only 45 years, he made a determination before dying that the relics from his body should remain so that the faithful could respect them. And it's because of this determination that they multiply for the faithful. Sayadaw added that although relics have been known to multiply, they can sometimes disappear too. He recalled an occasion when he had given several small relics to a devotee. To his and the devotee's surprise, they saw that within just a few minutes, the relics had formed into a single relic. The student asked whether any relics housed at Chaya Meditation Monastery had been known to multiply. Sayadaw's reply was simply, yes. Community procession of the Buddha's relics and the 1,000 Buddha statues prior to enshrinement in the World Peace Lucky, Happy Pagoda, May 3, 2015, 149, Las Vegas, Sayadaw. Sometime in 2015, Sayadaw received a donation that would soon become a signature element of daily meditation practice at Chaya Meditation Monastery. Before they moved to Orlando, Florida, a Lau family donated a big grandfather clock to the monastery. We put it right in our main hall, where it chimes every 15 minutes. We use it as our timer for our 1-hour group meditations 4 times a day. Prior to receiving the big clock, we had a smaller clock we used. After we got the big one, we initially moved the smaller clock to the ordination hall, but it would eventually settle in the meditation hall of a new men's retreat building we'd have built. Around mid-2015, Sayadaw reached out to Ashin Arsina in Yangon to follow up on his efforts to secure an R1 visa to come to the United States. Although the visa hadn't yet been approved, Ashin Arsina wouldn't have to wait much longer. It was finally issued in May 2016. After I got my visa, I stayed at my Yangon temple for another 2 months as I prepared to head to America. My best friend, Ashin Mandala, came with me. Ashin Mandala was a very smart guy and kind too. Because of him, we had no trouble at all during our travels to the United States. He would eventually disrobe though. After a nearly 15-hour flight, on July 1, 2016, we arrived safely in Las Vegas and settled at Chaya Meditation Monastery. Other than a 10-day retreat in the Mogok Sayadaw tradition at Yangon's Mogok Yiktha Meditation Center in 2008, when he was 25 years old, Ashin Arsina had no real experience with meditation practice. It was only upon his arrival at Chaya Meditation Monastery that he was introduced to the Mahasi Sayadaw method and began to practice Vipassana meditation consistently. My favorite thing to do is practice meditation. It makes me feel calm and peaceful. 150 Virtue Court, 2008 present, Burmese names. An American visitor was talking one day with Ashin Arsina about the proper way to address Burmese monks. The monk explained that the honorific Ashin was used for monks under 40 years of age, while the honorific Yu was used for monks age 40 or older. Both terms are respectful. Ashin essentially means Bhante, and Yu is like Mr. Ashin Arsina added that the word Sayadaw is specifically used for highly venerated monks or the abbots of monasteries. The visitor asked Ashin if it would be extra polite to refer to him, for example, as Ashin u Arsina. No, said the monk. Just use Ashin or you, as appropriate for the age. In the case of a Sayadaw, such as Sayadaw himself, one might make formal reference to him as Sayadaw u Zayathuta. However, this formal naming convention is seldom used in Myanmar. Instead, there is first referenced the place where the Sayadaw is living. Hence, Sayadaw u Zayathuta is more commonly known as Las Vegas Sayadaw. Similarly, Sayadaw u Sobhana is more widely known as Mahasi Sayadaw, Mahasi meaning big drum, being a reference to a large drum in Sekun village in Upper Myanmar, where the great master was born in 1904. Sayadaw elaborated on the polite and appropriate ways to refer to Buddhist monks from Myanmar. According to Burmese Buddhist culture, it's not polite to refer to a monk in a way that is outside of established naming conventions. Even calling me Ajahn Chaya, for instance, can be considered somewhat impolite. Take Mahasi Sayadaw as another example. If we call him by his ordained name, U Sobhana, it's very impolite. Mahasi means big drum. In the village where he lived, they had a big drum. When they would practice meditation, they'd hit the drum to let people know that the meditation was starting. So because he came from the village with the big drum, he came to be politely called Mahasi Sayadaw. This is Burmese Buddhist culture. 151 Las Vegas Sayadaw. What about Sayadaw u Pandita? We didn't call him U Pandita. We called him Shwe Tong Gon Sayadaw. After Mahasi Sayadaw died, Sayadaw u Pandita left Mahasi Sasana Yiktha Meditation Center and established his own center about a half-mile away. The place was called Shwe Tong Gon. Tong Gon means mountain, Shwe means gold, so Golden Mountain. A big house was offered to him there at Shwe Tong Gon, so we started calling him Shwe Tong Gon Sayadaw. Sayadaw offered another example. There was also Tangpulu Tauya Kaba Aye Sayadaw. He was called that because the mountain where he practiced meditation was called Tangpulu. Again, Tang means mountain. So in this case, Tangpulu means a very small mountain. Even in the time of the Buddha, there was Venerable Sariputta. His birth name was Upatissa, but no one called him that. They called him Sariputta. Putta means son, and Sari was his mother's name, so they called him Sariputta. That was the tradition. Sayadaw next offered some context to the different ways that people refer to him. Since I am here in Las Vegas, they call me Las Vegas Sayadaw. If I was living in Mandalay, they might call me Mandalay Sayadaw. If you called me by my name, it would be impolite. My Buddhist name is Zaya. In Pali, it's Jaya, which means victory. In Thailand, they pronounce it Chaya. Sometimes Burmese people who are new to the temple will come for a visit and see the sign out front that says Chaya on it. They think it's a Chinese temple. A few months ago, a Burmese couple from Daly City, California came here for the first time. When they showed up, I was talking in Thai to a group of Thai people. 152 Virtue Court, 2008 present. The Burmese couple sat there for 10 minutes waiting for me to finish. Then I heard them say to each other in Burmese, "We came to the wrong temple." But then I spoke to them in Burmese, and they were very happy. They said, "Oh, we thought this was a Chinese temple." Most Westerners know Sayadaw by his Thai name, Ajahn Chaya. I started being referred to as Ajahn Chaya when I was in Thailand. And when I came to the United States and lived at Wat Buddha Bhavana for those 5 years, there were no Burmese people around. I went nowhere. And so everyone there called me Ajahn Chaya too. But it wasn't very polite by Burmese standards. The more appropriate way to refer to a monk, using Thai naming conventions, would be to call me Phra Ajahn Chaya. This is polite. It's similar to how the Thai word krub means yes, but krub pom is a more polite way of saying yes. So the Thais call me Ajahn Chaya. The Burmese call me U Zaya. U means Mr. Burma is the only country in the world where people don't have last names. When we apply for a passport to leave the country, we use U for Mr. as our first name. In young monks, Ashin becomes the first name. But this is only because we don't have last names. Even the former United Nations Secretary General U Thant didn't have a last name. The visitor asked Sayadaw about his birth name. In Burma, once we ordain it's rude for someone to use our lay name, we give it up as soon as we take robes. 153 Las Vegas Sayadaw. Even if we disrobe, we still don't use our old lay name, and in Shan State, we just continue to use our monastic name. It's the same for everyone in Burma. It's our culture. No monk in Burma shares his birth name. Sayadaw explained that it's different in Thailand. Amongst Thai monks, maybe 10% use their Buddhist name, but 90% use their birth name. Consider Ajahn Chah. Chah was his birth name. It's a matter of culture. Although the monks' and nuns' residential wings at Chaya Meditation Monastery were suitable for typical monastic and lay retreatant usage, Sayadaw realized that the community needed more lodging for larger-scale events, such as when some 70 to 90 visitors might come from out of state to attend his annual birthday celebration. The community could also benefit, he realized, by having a private space for retreatants engaged in intensive silent meditation retreats. More land for future building construction was needed. A Thai family that had bought 2 of the lots adjacent to the monastery compound back in 1995 had since moved back to Thailand without developing the land. Sayadaw reached out to them to see if they might be open to selling the lots back to the monastery for future construction of both men's and women's dormitory buildings and meditation halls. The family was open to it. They offered to sell the lots back for just $37,000. Today, the 2 lots are worth $400,000. And so the temple was able to obtain 2 residential lots just outside the wall of the monastery compound for future construction of 2 large buildings, a men's and a women's dormitory building, each with a sizable meditation hall. In 2017, the first building, a 2-story women's dormitory and meditation hall, was constructed on Virtue Court, just outside the monastery compound entrance. It was built at a cost of $1,200,000. 154 Virtue Court, 2008 present. Around 2017, Sayadaw had an opportunity to travel to Europe. It was a destination he'd had the good fortune to visit from time to time over the years. On this trip, I visited Finland, Sweden, Estonia, Germany, and Moscow. I'm interested in learning about the cultures of these places. It can be difficult for Americans to get permission to enter Russia, but it wasn't for me. Burma and Russia are connected through their communist backgrounds, and over the years the Burmese government has sent 5,000 soldiers to study in Moscow. Because of all the Burmese students there, Moscow even has a Burmese Buddhist temple. A few monks live there. Sayadaw didn't visit the temple, perhaps the only Buddhist temple in Russia, while he was there. When we were in Russia, we visited the Kremlin and many other places. We saw a big palace too. I especially liked a museum they had there, but no pictures were allowed. The architecture in Moscow was amazing. Las Vegas Sayadaw in Moscow, circa 2017, 155. Las Vegas Sayadaw, not the middle way Sayadaw, had begun experiencing great difficulty speaking sometime in 2018. The issue had actually started more than 20 years earlier, around the time he began doing his annual 3-month silent meditation retreats. With no talking for 3 months each year, the muscles on the right side of Sayadaw's throat had over time become terribly weak. Whereas in the early years of his retreats, his voice would return shortly after he started speaking again and was able to rebuild the muscle. By 2018, he was finding it very difficult to speak and began using a microphone so that he could be heard. "It's my fault," reflected the master. "It's not the middle way." The middle way taught by Lord Buddha encourages us to avoid extremes. One of the key components of the Buddha's teaching is the cultivation of right speech, which entails speaking well, as opposed to not speaking at all. On the advice of a doctor, Sayadaw now tries to do daily voice exercises intended to strengthen the weakened muscles. They help, the master acknowledged, but finding time to do them is the hard part. Sayadaw traveled to Jordan and Egypt via Italy from late November to early December 2018. I first went to Jordan. There was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a very interesting place, that I wanted to visit. It's called Petra. From the capital of Jordan, it's about a 3-hour drive to the south. Once there, getting around the sprawling site requires about 3 hours of hiking in mountainous, desert terrain. Given the rugged trails at the site, many visitors opt to hire mules to take them around. When I got there, I saw thousands of tourists there to see it. I also visited some Christian churches while I was in Jordan. While in Egypt, Sayadaw visited the Great Pyramids and other archaeological and cultural sites, staying in hotels as he toured about the desert country. 156 Virtue Court, 2008 present. I'd traveled to Jordan specifically to see that World Heritage Site, but I was mainly interested in seeing Egypt, which is where I headed next. The capital of Egypt, the metropolis of Cairo, which is home to more than 21 million people, is only 350 miles west of Petra. A small sliver of Israel separates Jordan from Egypt. Ever since I was young, when I'd studied Egypt in school, I'd wanted to see a mummy. So I went to Egypt because I wanted to see a mummy. And I did. I traveled all over the country, too. Egypt, December 2018. On June 9, 2019, some 2 years after the construction of the women's dormitory and meditation hall, was the grand opening of a 2-story men's dormitory and meditation hall right across the street from the new women's dorm. The building had been constructed at a cost of $1,600,000, with a large meditation hall on the first floor and a smaller meditation area on the second floor, as well as a kitchen and dining area. The building also had sufficient sleeping quarters to comfortably accommodate perhaps 15 to 20 overnight guests. 157 Las Vegas Sayadaw. The grand opening ceremony was attended by several hundred people, including more than 50 monks, 10 of whom had taken temporary ordination the day before. Las Vegas Sayadaw, and members of the Chaya Meditation Monastery community during a June 2019 intensive meditation retreat. By late 2019, all but 3 of the 10 lots outside of the monastery compound along Virtue Court had seen development by various members of the temple community. 2 of the remaining vacant lots were owned by a Thai woman who was currently living in Chiang Mai. The 3rd lot was owned by Nun Madhavi's brother-in-law, who lived some 8 hours' drive away in San Francisco. By the end of the year, the temple was able to purchase the lot from Nun Madhavi's brother-in-law at a cost of $150,000. It was decided to pass on the remaining 2 lots, as their value had risen to $200,000 each. At the end of 2019, a middle-aged Burmese man asked Sayadaw for bhikkhu ordination. His wife had recently died and he'd lost his home. Upon ordination, the former sushi chef was given the Buddhist name U Vimala. U Vimala settled in as the newest resident monk at Chaya Meditation Monastery. 158 Virtue Court, 2008 present. Reordination. On occasion, a monk at Chaya Meditation Monastery will undertake a reordination ceremony. A curious member of the temple's lay community once asked Ashin Arsena about this. We sometimes reordain because a donor requests to sponsor us to do so. All monks should try to support those who want to make merit and do good things with their lives. By doing good things, people can achieve a lot of good things, and they will be happy, healthy, and wealthy. Everyone can do good things, and if someone wants to sponsor a monk to ordain again, we can do that. By doing this, both the monk and the donor benefit a lot. It's like having a clean towel that someone volunteers to wash again. The towel just gets that much cleaner. And because of this, some monks will reordain again and again. In Myanmar, some of the popular monks have reordained hundreds of times. An author, given how busy Sayadaw's schedule has kept him over the years, it's remarkable that he's written some 20 Dhamma books, including volumes in English, Thai, and Burmese. Most of the books I've written have been in the Thai language. I've written 14 books in Thai, I've also written 5 books in Burmese. My books have covered a wide variety of Buddhist topics, from Buddhism in general to the highest blessings, the noble truths, meditation, loving kindness, and even Kama. 159 Las Vegas Sayadaw has authored only a single book in English, a very short book of his teachings called Requirements for Peace and a Better Life. I'd been invited to the San Francisco area to give a series of Dhamma talks over 3 nights. The first night was going to be in Burmese, the second night in Thai, and the third night was going to be in English. As I formulated a plan about what I should talk about each evening, I sketched out my thoughts for the night I would be teaching in English. These sketches eventually turned into Requirements for Peace and a Better Life. Interested readers might consult Venerable Ajahn Chaya's book, Just Practice, The Collected Teachings of Luangpur Chaya, a 20-year collection of Sayadaw's transcribed Dhamma talks, and refer to the chapter titled The Requirements for Happiness. The chapter contains a transcription of the actual talk Sayadaw gave in English that evening at Theravada Dhamma Hall in Daly City, California. Because I'm so busy at the temple, the vast majority of my writing has been at airports or on long international flights, often to Europe. Las Vegas Sayadaw in Monte Carlo, 160 Virtue Court, 2008 present. Over the years, Sayadaw has been invited practically everywhere in Europe. He's visited France, Germany, Italy, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, Monte Carlo, Norway, and the gorgeous, mountainous country of Switzerland, whose rolling green hills reminded him of his home village of Kunhat. By his estimation, he's been to every country in Europe except Greece and Spain. Sayadaw has been to Paris 7 times after being invited to the city for house blessings, birthdays, and the like. His sponsors have shown him much of their city, visiting the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower, and have also taken him elsewhere around France. One of my Abhidhamma students, back when I was the abbot at Wat Buddhapavana, was a man from Laos who used to be a monk for 32 years. A lot of his former students were living in France, and he told them about me. So they started inviting me to Paris. The man from Laos, his monastic name used to be Maha Bunlam, is still a regular supporter of our temple, Las Vegas Sayadaw in Nice, France. As an author, Sayadaw has learned how to use his extended flight times well. He once recalled a particular non-stop, 12-hour flight from Las Vegas to Frankfurt, during which he spent the entire flight writing a book in Thai in one marathon session. 161 Las Vegas Sayadaw during March and April of 2020, when the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic was raging through the United States and much of the rest of the world, Sayadaw used the slowed visitation and enhanced solitude of the monastery to write his autobiography. Written first in Burmese, he eventually began the slow process of translating the 300-page book into the Thai language. Although the book is ready to be printed, the timing may not be good. The political situation in Burma isn't good right now. In my book, I talk about my experiences living in my village. In those days, we had the Shan ethnic group fighting with the government. They are still fighting today. There's been a lot of suffering. When the government came, they killed a lot of people. I saw this happen. My autobiography talks about this stuff. There are political repercussions to consider if the book is printed and distributed now. When the government army used to come to my village, they would trick the men to see if they would lie to them. If they did, they would kill them. So when the army came, all the men would run into the jungle. The women stayed, but then the soldiers made them carry their stuff everywhere for them. In those days, I was still young. I used to run to the temple and hide under the pagoda the whole day. The abbot of the temple would just close the door, and I'd stay in there alone whenever the army came. Then, when the army left, I'd come out from underneath the pagoda. Sayadaw once nearly died while hiding under the pagoda because it was so difficult to breathe in the confined space. 162 Virtue Court, 2008 present. People living in Mandalay or Rangoon don't understand this because they didn't experience it. In Shan State, they've been fighting for 70 years. Eventually, that area became a black area. They'd fight, and then the schools would be closed for years. My dad was the leader of the village. When the army came, They made him take care of their every need. But later they sent him a letter saying they were coming to kill him the next day. So Sayadaw's father left the village, ordained as a monk in Mandalay, and basically disappeared for 2 years. He had no choice, otherwise he would have been killed. The Shan ethnic groups were fighting against 1,000 soldiers, which the Chinese supported, and every year they'd enlist villagers in Shan state to be their new soldiers. These were difficult times. It was all terrible, so I wrote a book about it. But we might need to wait a while before we have it printed and can give it to people. Las Vegas Sayadaw, visiting a Christian church in Estonia. 163, Las Vegas Sayadaw. Meanwhile, in the autumn of 2020, Just Practice, the collected teachings of Luang Porchaya was published. The 400-plus page book was the first significant volume of Sayadaw's teachings to be published in the English language. Covering some 20 years of Dhamma talks offered by the Master, the book covers an interesting range of topics related to Buddhist practice, including the 4 elements, the guardian meditations, the many methods of practicing loving-kindness meditation, the 7 stages of purification, the attainment of supramundane knowledge, meditation on the impurity of the body, and the cultivation of mindfulness in our daily lives. The Path of the Bodhisattva. A student asked Sayadaw about the Mahayana teachings on the path of the Bodhisattva, that is, delaying one's final enlightenment, as one gradually strives for full Buddhahood, for the benefit of all living beings. Helping others is samatha, and samatha practice alone cannot lead us to enlightenment. He added that in Theravada Buddhism, enlightenment is the state of a noble person, the state of one who has gained at least the first of the 4 stages of enlightenment, whereas in Mahayana Buddhism, they may sometimes refer to an insight or a mundane realization as enlightenment. But that's not what the Buddha taught. Sayadaw finished his reply to the student by offering a thought-provoking perspective. An enlightened person may be reborn as an angel. As they continue to practice meditation, they go higher and higher. But to return to the human world for the purpose of helping others would be very hard because most people generally don't want to listen. The suttas don't have stories of noble beings returning to the human world. 164 Virtue Court, 2008 present, Giving. In January 2021, Sayadaw was encouraging a student to keep a written record of the donations he makes, the occasions he undertakes the 8 precepts, and the number of hours he practices meditation. It's good karma, he told the student, to reflect on our good deeds. This is especially true as one nears the time of death, as reflecting on one's wholesomeness at the end of life is the proximate karma that could lead to a good rebirth. What about you? Asked the student. Do you keep track of your good deeds? Sayadaw's reply was noteworthy and inspiring. I don't do that, but I do a lot of good deeds. For me, I won't forget the big things I've done. Like here in Las Vegas, for 30 years on the occasion of my birthday, supporters have made donations, but I never, ever use it for personal things. Instead, I make a lot of donations. We bought the land and built this building. I made many $10,000 donations toward that. It's not my money. It's from the people who support me. I just give it away. Sayadaw is especially generous toward the Kunhat community in Myanmar. Although he'd not had an opportunity to visit his home village in nearly 43 years, Kunhat and its people had not been forgotten by the Master. I do a lot of things for the place where I was born. I built a school for them, because it's very expensive. I built meditation and dormitory buildings for men and women. I even bought land and built a temple building and an ordination hall. I also built a large kitchen and dining hall. I provided electricity for the village and built a road for cars. And I helped establish drinking water with a well too. 165 Las Vegas Sayadaw. There's also the 200-year-old pagoda on one of the mountains above Kunhat, for which one of Sayadaw's paternal great-grandfathers had sponsored the construction. Well, no one took care of it for many decades, so it fell into disrepair. So now I sponsor the maintenance of it. And I funded the construction of a new pagoda at the temple in my village too. Sayadaw uses the donations he's given to help others. South Kunhat Village, where Las Vegas Sayadaw lived from 1947 to 1966. This photo was taken from Kunhat Temple, looking roughly northeast from the center of the village. In the foreground are two buildings belonging to a clinic staffed by two nurses. The clinic sits next to the temple. Sayadaw purchased the land for the eventual construction of the clinic. To the left of the 200-year-old pagoda in the distance at the far end of the village is an ordination hall that Sayadaw funded the construction of around 2019. The original owners of the land had moved away, so Sayadaw bought the land and then donated it to the temple. Although Kunhat Temple has only a single monk and perhaps 2 novices today, the ordination hall typically sees 1 or 2 ordinations each year. Situated to the left of the ordination hall is a 2-story middle school building for which Sayadaw also funded the construction. To the right of the old pagoda is a red-roofed meditation building, additionally funded by Sayadaw, 166 Virtue Court, 2008 present. Next to the meditation building is a small blue-roofed temple building. Although the temple building is considered part of the main temple located in the middle of the village, for a time a lone monk lived there. He chose the location because he liked to be alone, and because there is a cemetery next to the pagoda, and the monk wanted to live near the cemetery. The monk died a few years ago. The master continued, "I've not only supported my birthplace, I've supported 5 villages. For example, in one of them, they had to carry water a long way. Now, a water source has been established in front of 10 houses. So now they can get water easily. It costs a lot of money to do this. They have electricity now too, for which I donated a lot of money. I'm happy to have an opportunity to do these things." 1,000 people are happy now too. Although he's not had a chance to return to that part of Myanmar for a long time, Sayadaw sees the value in supporting the people who still live there. Now we have 8 pagodas we're working on. We just finished 3 of them. It cost a lot of money, but I made donations for that. I have a picture of one of the pagodas too. So even though I don't record these things on paper, I record them in my brain. By his estimation, Sayadaw has donated many hundreds of thousands of dollars over the decades. Some people in those villages are very poor, and some are very rich, but they don't have sada. They don't understand the Dhamma. Some of these people have their own car and a good business, but they donate very little. I do things for their villages, like building walls and kitchens. 167. Las Vegas Sayadaw. Now, some of them go to the temple, observe the 8 precepts, listen to the Dhamma, and practice meditation, men and women both, in a big 2-story building, like we have at Chaya Meditation Monastery. It even has a big ordination hall, which we finished not long ago. Sayadaw shared some more words about his ongoing efforts to help the people of northern Myanmar with their education. We built a school a few years ago. It's a 2-story building for about 500 students. I provided them furniture, educational books, and school uniforms, and every year I send gifts to the 10 teachers. Also, for any of the nuns, novices, or monks who finish middle school and want to go to the city for university, I provide for that too. I support their education. I am very happy to do so. I've done this since I lived in Rangoon. I take care of almost 30 students. I even used to sell my robes for their education, for their tuition, for their books, and for their doctor appointments. It's good to do good things when we have an opportunity. He closed with a few more inspiring remarks to his student. I don't use money I've been given for myself, except when I need to buy a plane ticket to travel overseas. I don't ask supporters to pay for this. If I told someone I needed to fly somewhere, they'd probably be very happy to buy a ticket for me. But I don't tell anyone. I just buy the ticket, then tell them what I've already done. Except when I travel overseas, I don't use even $1 that I've been donated for myself. Instead, I keep it for students and poor people, for the temple, or for the school. Last year, in March and April, when the guests stopped coming, 168 Virtue Court, 2008 present, to the temple because of the pandemic, I wrote my book that talks about some of this stuff. I wrote my autobiography, and it's over 300 pages. I did that because I would like others to realize what they can choose to do with their resources. You can read about all this later when the English version of my biography comes out. When I was young, about 10 or 11 years old, I finished 6th grade. I had no chance to continue my education in my village, although I was a very smart child, so I had to go to the city, though my parents initially hadn't wanted me to. I don't want the next generation to be like that, so I support their efforts to go to the city and continue their education. After I eventually went to Rangoon and continued my studies of Buddhist scripture, I finished my higher education and became a teacher. It was only then, at 30 years of age, that I started to learn my ABCs. It was very difficult, but I tried my best. The original Kunhat Temple, where Las Vegas Sayadaw was ordained and lived as a novice, burned down around 1971. This image of the new Kunhat Temple, which is still situated in the middle of South Kunhat village, reflects a much larger temple complex than in Sayadaw's time. In 2011, Sayadaw funded the construction of a 2-story men's meditation and dormitory building, the large building on the right. He later, 169 Las Vegas Sayadaw, funded the construction of a large kitchen and dining hall and a women's meditation and dormitory building, seen behind the pagodas. Around 2017, Sayadaw also funded the construction of one of the pagodas. Goodbye, U Zawana. In January 2021, one of the junior monks, 75-year-old U Zawana, who'd ordained in 2012, began experiencing unexplainable fatigue and loss of appetite. A number of doctor visits didn't solve the problem, and his condition eventually deteriorated. In March, U Zawana's condition became acute, and one day he was taken to the hospital. His 2 sons from his former marriage were notified and joined him at the hospital. One of the sons called Sayadaw and asked him to come quickly because things weren't looking good. It seemed like he was waiting for Sayadaw and the other monks to come because the minute they walked in through the doors, he passed away. I believe the time was 6:33 p.m. U Zawana. In honor of their father's passing, U Zawana's 2 sons took temporary bhikkhu ordination at Chaya Meditation Monastery shortly after his death. One of the temple's lay supporters would later reflect that he'd felt a particularly close kinship with the likable monk, who was usually 170 Virtue Court, 2008 present, the first one in the main hall for the daily group meditation periods. U Zawana would often encourage the lay supporter to stay on after the conclusion bell rang and meditate with him for an hour longer. The kind old monk was also remembered for being generous and cheerful. Our body, our life, our mind. While teaching Abhidhamma to a young monk, Sayadaw commented, "We can study the Quran or the Bible or the Vedas, but we won't see something like this. Why do all the gods say something else?" we might ask. Every religion is good, but we are fortunate to be Buddhists. We don't have to depend on what people say. We study, we practice, and we'll know for ourselves. That's why we need to learn. We don't learn from a book. We learn from our body, our life, our mind. 171.